fabulous friends of Facebook. We are tonight talking about the connection between your health and your relationships. We did a video a couple nights ago just about relationships. We are really into helping couples through relationship problems. And, you know, that actually, some of you probably know this, is that's how I even got into all of this mindset work, was to improve our relationship, because I realized I had a lot of dysfunctions, I had a lot of issues, I had a lot of, problems relating to my partner, relating to my significant other. And through fixing that, I found, so many avenues of self-improvement, and, our relationship has just gotten better and better. And so we're excited about helping other couples and other people improve their relationships. And so tonight we kind of wanted to focus on like the German New Medicine connection between, the health of your relationships. Can you improve your relationship and that improve your health? And if you know anything about GNM, the intimate connection between, your perception, your, experience of life, and, your relationship is a huge, huge part of that, your romantic relationship. And if there are issues, there are any number of different biological conflicts that can come about as a result of having chronic, consistent, persistent relationship problems. And so we wanted to talk about some of those connections, and if it's not already a big enough thing for you, because that's the thing, is a lot of times relationship problems, it's like, okay, yeah, he's a pain, and yeah, it's not great. But if it is the thing that's causing your chronic health problem, and you are unaware of the connection between kind of this steady level of stress that you have because of your relationship and how that's impacting your body, not in kind of a theoretical, like, oh yeah, stress causes sickness way, but in that specific connection of like, oh wow, I'm realizing that my relationship with my partner actually is the reason for my chronic digestive problem, because of that indigestible morsel, or this shoulder issue because of a chronic relationship self-devaluation. So we kind of want to just talk about a few different connections and get you excited about resolving these things, and not only improving your relationships, but improving everything about your life and your physical health as well.
So the thing to me that's interesting is that, like, nobody thinks that having a lot of tension and disharmony and strife with your partner is healthy. And so whether or not it's like the German New Medicine's perspective, which is that you've got these people who are interacting with each other. I mean, think about it like this, that there are relationships that are more or less conducive to creating situations or giving rise to situations in which conflict shocks are likely. A relationship in which everything's pretty much harmonious, people get along, there's not a lot of unexpected behavior, there's not a lot of resentment, everything's really good, everything's really great, everything's happening pretty well. Couple of things. One, the chances of one partner or another partner doing something that's likely to provoke a conflict shock, right? So unfaithful, or they decide that they don't want to be with you anymore and it's completely out of left field, whatever. The chances of that stuff happening are much less. The interesting thing about it too is that it's not that it can't happen. It's just that, like, if we're like in knockdown, drag out fights all the time, I'm unhappy, you're unhappy, you resent me, I resent you, I'm looking for like ways out, you're looking for ways out, or you're looking for ways to find things you're not getting from me while in the relationship, but maybe with someone else, and all this, that is kind of like more likely to give rise to, at the very least, stress, and then also possibly situations that are likely to cause conflicts, like biological conflicts, then is sort of a neutral relationship, and certainly a really positive relationship in which everything's great between you and your partner, or everything's kind of moving in the right direction. Maybe you have problems. Maybe there are some things that aren't totally resolved. There are some things that aren't totally unpacked, aren't totally addressed. Some hurts that aren't totally healed, or some, recurring patterns that are still coming up. But you've got like a plan in place. You're dealing with that. You're learning how to respond more resourcefully to that. You maybe have a problem, but you feel pretty good about what you're doing to address that problem. That's very different. It's not the goal isn't necessarily to just get rid of all of your problems, because they're always going to be around in one form or another. Little things are going to come up, and it's not necessary really to get rid of problems to have a really great quality relationship. What is necessary most of the time is having the ability to respond resourcefully to the problems that you have, and having a feeling that like both you and your partner are in the process of getting better at responding resourcefully to that stuff. Because what happens then is you don't really have a problem with the fact that you have a problem. Like, do we have relationship problems? It's like, well, right now there's nothing going on, and it's been a while since anything really has happened. I do know that occasionally, say a couple times every other month or something like that, we'll sort of get into something. I do know that there are some kind of communication snags that can happen. Every once in a while, one or the other of us will just get into a state of mind where it's like we're dead set on creating some conflict. So I'm aware of the fact that like we have that going on, that it hasn't been like a year since that's happened. That's kind of like my thing, my litmus test for like this done is it's been a year since it's happened. And so I'm aware that we have like a problem in a sense. There's a project that we could work on. It's very kind of slow moving because it doesn't happen every day for us. It's several months sometimes before it happens, but it's still there to some degree. But I don't have a problem with the fact that we have that. Like, I'm not over here thinking, God, I've got to figure out how to get the hell out of this relationship because we've got this thing and nothing's moving forward and she's not interested. I feel really good about it. I think you feel really good about it, right? Mm-hmm. That's okay. You can have a problem, but you don't want to have a problem with the problem because you feel like nothing's ever going to change with it. On the other hand, I think that like when you've got a really solid, wonderful relationship, you're excited to be with the person, you feel like they're excited to be with you, you guys look forward to seeing each other, you interact with each other in ways that make it easy to feel about them the way that you want to feel about your partner. They're sort of like taking care of themselves so that they feel good enough to interact with you in a way that makes you feel wanted, that makes you feel appreciated, that makes you feel desirable, that makes you feel just kind of like just looking forward to interacting with each other. Do you know what I mean? I think that can actually go a long way to not only obviously preventing relationship-related conflicts, I think it kind of lowers a person's emotional threshold in a way so that if something goes on at your job, if something's going on with the kids, maybe the kids are growing up and leaving the house or whatever, I think that it actually lowers the overall chances that a person will kind of like be so impacted by a life event in the relationship or out of it, that they would experience a conflict shock. And so that to me is a really great thing. It's like if having a really wonderful, fun, rewarding relationship not only means that you're not, having problems, health problems tied to stress related to the relationship, you're actually also kind of building up this shore of good feeling and optimism and just, you've got a safe place to fall and all this good stuff that probably is going to make it easier for you to interact with kind of the negative aspects of life outside the relationship.
Absolutely. I think that that's so true is that, the relationship should ideally, what I would want it to be is that the like safe harbor, that place where like, I'm 100% responsible for me, you're 100% responsible for you. But like if tragedy strikes, when stuff happens in life, that we're there for each other. And
or minor strategies like the computer stops working.
Yeah, exactly. Minor tragedies. That like I can rely on you. Like I'm supported by you in this relationship, because I can't tell you, and it breaks my heart because so many people that I work with, a lot of times they don't have that safety. They don't have that like that thing to kind of fall back on. And if that is the case, that's fine. A lot of times you get to a point in your life, or maybe you lost that person, and you have that kind of internal resilience. But if you're at a stage where your relationship kind of like, it could go either way, either you can like become continually estranged from each other and unsupportive of one another, or you could be growing together. I think that going the route of growing together and mutual improvement and resolving what can be resolved and working towards building that kind of like that connection and that lovely safety of the romantic relationship will help you so much when things happen in your life that could have been a conflict shock. So if you're listening to this and, someone on our last video was like, oh, well, I wish I had a relationship. Or if you're at a point where like your relationships, sometimes people are just coping, honestly, like with the relationships that they have, their partner is kind of set in stone. They don't think that it's changeable. there are still things that you can do on your part to build that resilience, to build that inner sense of support. So I don't want to think that I don't want you to think that if you don't have a relationship that, you're just kind of out there on your own. I do believe that you can create an amazing experience of even a less than ideal relationship that really can change. When you change, when you soften your responses to a really unpleasant partner, that can actually inspire changes in them that you may not even think are possible. So that's just a little nugget of hope and encouragement. If you're in a relationship that you're just he'd never take a course, he'd never do a program, he'd never work with me on this. It's just it is what it is at this point. I do think that there are things that you can do and avenues that you can explore individually that will help you in this realm of creating more harmony in your relationship, even if the other person isn't supportive or on board with it.
Yeah, I think ultimately it's I regard myself as being pretty much 100% responsible for the quality of my experience of being with Melissa. It's I'm responsible for the fact that I'm with her. I'm also responsible for the fact that I'm not interacting with her more resourcefully. I'm not responding more resourcefully to the fact that there are things about her that maybe she's not willing to change. All of it ultimately kind of comes down to me. I think that for the individual, human beings, they kind of do this pair bonding where pretty much, there are obviously exceptions to this, but on the whole, what happens is two people get together, they kind of go off, and then they're somewhat insulated from the rest of the world. Sometimes it's extreme, sometimes there's more kind of interacting with the outside world socially and all this stuff. But generally speaking, people kind of pair off and they go and do their own thing. And that can be really nice. That could be a very kind of productive, wonderful, enriching kind of life experience. It can also be a mess, and I think sometimes people get themselves into these situations and they're in the hole. They don't want to be in the hole, but they're in the hole. What are they going to do, And I find for me, it's it's really useful for me to have, I'm the CEO of my life experience. And Melissa has nothing to do with that. You know what I'm saying? I have to run my company, and then my company and your company can maybe do a joint venture together, and that's a really kind of nice and enriching thing. But at the end of the day, I have to pay attention to the extent to which this relationship is working for me. Because only I know the extent to which this relationship is working for me. Only I know and am able to identify why, if it isn't working for me, or it isn't fulfilling some need, or it's requiring something I'm not willing to give, or not supplying something that I really want to be receiving, it's my job to figure out that, and having to have the courage to acknowledge that, and to have kind of the determination to say, in this life, I'm not wrong to want the things I want. I'm not wrong to need the things that I feel like I need. I'm not, and just to have that willingness as an individual to look frankly and candidly at the relationship and say, how happy am I with it? How's this working, right? What's my definition of working? Is my definition of working, I think I can get through another day without murdering this person? I think I can get through another day without completely losing my mind? Or is it, I can't complain because I'm so accustomed to this that it's hard for me to imagine anything different? Or is it, actually, you know what? Things are pretty good. Larry David, pretty good. We have fun together. We're learning to be more productive together. We're talking, things are really kind of feeding off of each other. We're moving in the right direction. Maybe we're hitting speed bumps. That's totally fine. On the whole, though, I'm really happy with this. And I'm also happy about looking into the future, seeing how I'm going to be even happier with this relationship moving forward because of things we're doing now. And what you use for your reference point there is hugely important. And, it's like there's a lot of people who, with their health, their physical health, they're kind of in the conventional system. They go to the doctor says, you don't have to start doing anything different yet. You're maybe a little overweight, but you're not in this arbitrary bracket that means that I have to tell you to lose weight. You don't have to go on this medication yet. You're not diabetic, you're pre-diabetic, or you're pre-diabetic, or you're what's the, I don't know how far they're going to, pre times 8 diabetic, And the person then says to themselves, oh, so I'm fine. I can keep doing what I'm doing. Versus someone who says, oh, I'm in a state right now, I'm in a condition right now where I can see where if I keep heading in a particular direction that's not great, I'm going to end up somewhere I don't want to be. But because it's not so bad now that it's limiting me in a kind of crushing way, I can now start kind of preemptively to start doing really wonderful things about this. And I think that there's nothing that will challenge a relationship to grow and to really, it's stress tests it in an interesting way when at least one person in that relationship says, you know what, I just don't want to settle for being less than enthusiastic about what it's like to be me. I just don't want to be, and very often it's not just the relationship. It's like if I'm settling for what I don't want here, chances are that's just kind of a microcosm of the rest of my life, because there's very few people who demand excellence in every area of their life except the most important area of their life with their significant other. And so if you just start to look at that and you start to say like, okay, so what seems to be going wrong? How am I maybe contributing to what's going wrong? And that's not something to feel guilty about. It's a diagnostic thing to say, okay, like how am I maybe feeding into getting results that I don't want? That's useful information, because if you can figure that out, you can start trying new things. And like, am I settling? If I'm settling, why am I settling? Why am I okay with this? If I really think about it, do I want to be okay with this? Why is good enough for me? And really kind of doing that kind of inner work allows you to kind of clarify your experiential vision, right? Which is what you would most like to have. And that oftentimes is like the first thing. And then you start looking at what about you, what about your partner, what about the way you guys are interacting, is getting in the way of that kind of experiential ideal. Because I think about it's like gears, that like sort of interlock and sort of go like this. There's a couple of different scenarios. If there's like a relationship problem going on, if you got one gear that's kind of all mangled and another gear that's pretty well working right, it's not going to work. If you got two mangled gears, you're in big trouble, But if you got two gears that are working pretty well, but they're just a little kind of offset, what I'm saying? It's still not going to be working properly. And so that's why the work that we do with people, and we're doing something in February. We're going to have this really great kind of relationship group coaching thing. We're going to be meeting twice a week and just deep diving into, we're going to cover big picture principles and then work on applying them to specific people's relationship issues so that you can see how this stuff kind of operates in the wild. It's like, you can look at a car on the showroom floor, you can look at an idea on a Facebook Live video, but it's a little bit different when you take that thing off road. You want to be able to, I like to see the videos and things where the car's tearing through the mud and up the hills and all this different stuff. Those ideas, when you see the ideas at work in the trenches of your experience, then you get an idea, really a sense for how those ideas can transform what your experience is like. And, sometimes you got to replace a gear. Sometimes that person's not the right one for you. Sometimes you get together with the wrong person for the wrong reason. Sometimes you get together with the right person for the wrong reasons. And if that's the case, you want to replace those reasons so that you can be the right person for the right reasons. Then things really start flowing really well. But it's, I guess, really important. It's so easy to underestimate the impact that the quality of your relationship is having, not just on the in the moment quality of what it's like to be you, but also the effect that it's having on your ability to be really effective at going into other areas of your life and really living up to your potential in terms of creating the things that you want. Like if you've got a significant other that isn't supportive of you, that's like a big problem. Do you know what I mean? Because either you don't care about what they think, in which case it's just kind of like, well, why don't you get your own place and you can, do your thing. Or you do care about what they think and you're timid because, every time you think about doing something, you think about them disapproving or them thinking it's stupid or them whatever. And I have just found and I felt this early in our relationship, that I was like, we have to fix these problems, because just personally, I felt utterly demoralized by that kind of recurring drama, because I grew up in that stuff, and I dreamed of turning 18 and getting the hell out of my house, because it was just this kind of cesspool of drama and dysfunction. And when I got out and I started kind of having serious relationships of my own, when that stuff started to creep out, when we kind of were really into this kind of big picture of being together for a while, at that point, I was like, oh my God, I've got myself into a situation where not you are a problem, but where we are continually creating this just kind of ritualistic drama. I was like, I just noticed I didn't want to exercise. I didn't care about my projects. I didn't have this big, broad view of the future. I just wanted to resolve this terrible fight so we could go to sleep. Or and then the next day, you know what I mean? And that was just like, wow, I feel that top 5% of my creative energy, of my determination to do better, push the bounds of what's possible for me. I feel that being totally obliterated by not the relationship, but by the things in the relationship that weren't working. And I think that so many people are stifled by that. It's not that it's your partner's fault. It's not that it's your fault. It's just that when two people are together suboptimally, and they're not interacting in the most kind of efficient and enriching ways, that really just corrodes some of the best quality energy that those two people have. And when you get that stuff sorted out, which is absolutely possible to do, it's amazing how good life can be, how much you can enjoy just day-to-day life. And also, you've got this reservoir of like really primo, top shelf. What's the expensive gas called? What's the
Premium.
good premium? Like the really like special gas that's supposed to be magical for your sports car. You've got a different type of energy. I think that's that thing, is that you got different types of energy. You've got like creative energy. You've got slog through the mundane, overwhelming tasks of the day energy. You've got these different energies, but there's this genius energy that I think everyone has. This kind of like capacity to say, okay, here's what we've got. Boy, what's a vision for the future, what we'd like to have. And that's such a delicate thing. And I find that when people are having kind of relationship issues, that's the first thing to go. And that's how people stay in the same place, in the same house, even if they don't want to be there. The same kind of issues, the same life circumstances for forever. It's because they spend most of their energy figuring out how to not divorce the other person.
You've got like a big project in your house. If you had like a big project in your house, it's like remained undone because like all the energy, like you're mad that he hasn't done stuff with this project that he said he was going to do. And so you're just like, you end up getting in a huge blow up fight when like, if that energy had just been turned to like working on this project, that it could be completely fixed. You could have a completely new wing of your house. And that actually brings me to like what you were saying about just that creative energy. When we started realizing the connection, and so, we had been having, fights and relationship problems for years before I discovered GNM. But then when we made the connection between these fights that we were having and the resolution of the fight, we'd have these big long fights and we just, oh my goodness, they would just be terrible. Typically they'd be initiated by communication weirdness and like patterns of fight causing that were generated by me, because I have a lot of those. And so I would feel guilty for starting the fight, and he would feel demoralized for having had another fight. And so we're both just like feeling bad. And when we linked that to the deep shoulder ache and him not being able to like press his weights over his head, and I can't do a push-up because like my shoulder hurts so bad, because that's the connection is your dominant hand shoulder is related to your person you sleep in the bed with. And so like when you are feeling bad or feeling guilty about having caused yet another fight or like this going on again, and then we linked it to that deep shoulder ache, it was just yet another, as if it wasn't enough just to keep the peace and harmony for that creative energy, and that just like, we're doing really good. We're moving in the direction we want to go, not destroying momentum. But when you begin to realize the connection between these ongoing relationship problems and your physical health, it's like, oh boy, hold the phone. We've got to fix this. Like I can't, if you, the way that you interpret your relationship problems is like, I can't accept this. I can't accept the things that you're doing and the way that you are, and you can't process it. And it's causing like chronic stomach, digestive problems, if it for men, like prostate issues, if your like wife is kind of belittling you and like talks down to you and bosses you around, and you're just kind of, like sick of that, it manifests in the physical body. And so when you start to realize, whoa, this isn't just something that's like, our dog just walked in the room.
Sorry, it's like a magnet. It just takes
this isn't just something that's confined to like our conversations and yelling. This is something that's like, my body is perceiving this conflict. My body is adapting to this, this constant disturbance in my peace of mind. And so when you have that kind of extra little, all right now, that can be just an extra motivator for resolving these issues, and for finding something that's actually going to work for both of you to create a shared reality and create this harmony and to create a relationship that's like nice to be in. And that's something we really want to help people do. If this is something, if you're like, yes, I encourage you to do something about it, because your idea of your relationship. And this was my problem in my previous relationship, is like I had these ideas about it and it never lived up to like my ideas about it. And there was a conflict, there was a clash between like my vision and what I thought this person was. And, oh, but when his best, he's like this and like this and like this, and it could be like this. But then, I had to get kind of like have some radical honesty with myself and be like, listen, look at what's in front of you. Is this what you want? Is this what you want? Are you actively moving towards creating more of the results, more of the feelings? Do you want a lifetime of this? And having kind of the courage to do what it takes to improve, to change your own self like that. I mean, this work has all been about me changing and noticing the stories and the beliefs that I have about relationships and about men, and about, what it's like to be in this intimate relationship, and just reforming my thoughts, changing my beliefs, changing, the way that I communicate, being aware of what I feel, because so much of it is just like, like passive aggressive, weird communication that you pick up on. I'm not even aware that I'm like being passive aggressive. It's just, it becomes so habitual and so natural.
When that's something too, like that, like just as an example, when you've got the ability to, and this is sort of one of the things that we spend a lot of time with when we're working with couples, is establishing a context in which, like, if you're aware of something that I'm doing and you point that out to me, that is not construed as or intended as an attack. So, if there's a relationship situation in which you guys are, there's an adversarial dynamic, or there's an adversarial dynamic that crops up whenever one or the other person is doing something they're not supposed to be doing, well, then you're really kind of handicapping yourself, because it's like, would it be best if I could see myself being passive aggressive and then do something about it without even having to confess to well, sure, that would be ideal, but my awareness isn't perfect, and there are times when, and usually it's when I'm in bad states that cause me to behave in unresourceful ways. I don't see what I'm doing for what it really is. I'm seeing it kind of through the lens of self-justification, or I'm so kind of immersed just in, for me, it's just unpleasant feelings that I'm not aware that the behaviors that those feelings are generating are not fair or not useful or not really based on reality. It's based on how I'm feeling inside. And I need a situation, I need to build a sort of dynamic between us and an understanding of what this relationship is all about that allows me to hear you say, it seems like you're kind of doing so when you say it seems like you're being passive aggressive, that's not an accusation. That's not like, well, you're breaking the rules, so you've got to pay a penalty now. It has to create this dynamic where if you say that to me, I go, oh, isn't that interesting? And I check inside and I see if it's true, rather than immediately marshaling my case to say, no, that's not true. That's not what I was doing. In fact, I think that's what you're doing, And like, that's such an important thing, and I think like, and that's one of the things that we're going to be doing in these series of sessions, is just kind of like reformulating. Because if you've got a couple that gets kind of confrontational, or like if inside you feel not safe when the other person points out something that you're doing, you're doing such a disservice to yourself, because it becomes like impossible for you to benefit from their kind of advantaged ability to see you perhaps doing things that you yourself don't see happening. And like, when you can just build an inner world and also an interpersonal kind of dynamic between the two of you, where it's just like, me feeling good about myself doesn't depend upon my being incapable of being a jerk. Me feeling good about myself doesn't depend upon it being impossible that I do stupid things in my relationship sometimes. Say stupid things, say smart things in stupid ways, which I've always thought was extra stupid, because it's like your ideal was right, but you did it in such a dumb way. You would have been better off saying something that was dumb in an elegant way, I need to be able to acknowledge that, like, it's possible for me to do these things. If I'm hungry, if I'm tired, if I'm kind of just grumpy about something like that. Because if I've accepted the possibility that that's true, and I have a kind of history of positive interactions with you that let me know that, like, if you point that out to me, it's not because you're trying to get me to admit it so that next time we're fighting, you can say, see, you're always this way, then we have a situation where we can actually be helping each other. And that's really just so useful. And I think that you have to be real kind of with your partner. And a lot of the times what happens is you have to unravel a lot of these stereotype patterns of interacting, like defensiveness, or accusations, a lot of what gets called narcissistic behavior even. It's not that there's something like malignant in the person that causes them to be that way. It's that their brain has automated programs. How am I going to react to you? Well, you seem angry at me. And my brain goes, and it goes, okay, this is how we'll react when we're angry. You need to find something to be angry with her about, or you need to be angry about the fact that she's angry. And so usually when people are having relationship problems, it's not that two people aren't getting along. It's that their patterns aren't getting along. Their patterns are creating conflict. And it's really interesting when you kind of go through and begin to unravel all that junk and all. It's as if you had to say everything you had to say to your partner through an intermediary. And that intermediary was not a very nice person and didn't have either of your interests in mind. It was, imagine your parents at their worst, whichever parent, and imagine that everything you wanted to say to your partner, whether it was I love you or hey, excuse me, would you change this behavior? You had to say it through that worst parent in their worst state. What a mess that would be. That's a lot of people's relationship reality, because when they're interacting with their partner, they're not in a place where they're able to use their whole brain and say, okay, what do I want? What does he or she want? What's the best way to get that? If they're reacting in a way or behaving in a way that's not nice or not kind or whatever, what's the most logical explanation for why they're doing that? How can I most resourcefully respond to that in a way that's going to create results that we want? Most people don't do that because they don't have the capacity to do that, because before their thinker turns on, their automatic pattern behavior turns on, and they're not really thinking. They're just playing an old tape about something they saw somebody else acting out before. That's not thinking. That's an alternative to thinking. What's really interesting, though, is that when you clear that crap out, what you've got left is two people. And then it's very interesting to see how those two people interact. It's not always perfect, but then at least when you have a problem, like when Melissa and I have like problems, and it's like you have actually got a problem with me. It's not some pattern of yours or something you learned from your mom about, whatever you watched or some other figure that you saw when you were growing up. And when I'm responding to you, really on the basis of me saying to myself, what's happening? What seems to be happening? What seems to be the best way to respond to it? How can I be usefully engaged in this process? Things usually go very well, very, very well. But when those patterns are there, it's a mess. And it's because those patterns are designed to create messes and make people feel bad about themselves. When you get that junk out of the way, though, you start interacting with an actual real person. The horizon of possibilities really just opens up incredibly.
Oh my gosh, all of what you just said is just so true. And just that ability to notice, and like, I am like running a program. I'm like these words are not my own. And in like noticing, and this is what we talked about in that last video, was just like that feeling so convicted. One of those things is this, like when I'm feeling very justified and very convicted in what I'm pointing at that you're doing wrong, I have to get suspicious. And if I didn't even know to get suspicious about that, I mean, I'd still be causing fights in that same exact way. There's some really cool work that Steve and I studied for a little while that we like to get into every now and then from Eric Byrne about like the parent-adult child. And, like when it's just adult to adult, when it's just like you and me without the patterns, I'm not feeling like an attacked child. I'm not trying to, talk down to you like as a parent. And we have these like crossed transactions that cause so much havoc when it's just like, this was a straightforward interaction. If I hear something you say and I filter it through being like a child that's getting in trouble, which is typically how, like, oh, you're blaming me. Oh, I can't be blamed.
I won't.
Or if I try to, parent you and talk to you in kind of like a, an unattractive, like parent kind of talking down sort of way, when I become aware of that, when we kind of like, when I snap to and we're just operating in this adult to adult zone, I mean, it's great.
It's life. Life is actually pretty good. Relationships are actually pretty good. And I think that's that thing. It's like when what an argument or a disagreement or even just like a conversation, when what it's about is actually what it's about. So there's a sink full of dishes. Hey, would you mind go cleaning the dishes? And you go, no, I think I just don't want to. Do you mind doing it? When that exchange is really just down to who in this moment really, really doesn't want to wash the dishes, and who in this moment is kind of better placed in terms of their energy level, in terms of just how they're feeling, in terms of all those things to actually do it. When it's actually just a logistical question, it's usually pretty easy to arrive at a conclusion. You'll say, well, I did it the last several times, or, oh, would you do it? I just really don't want to get up. I'm so comfortable. And I'll go, yeah, okay. And it's so clear to me. But so this is a very interesting thing. Have you ever had someone ask you to do something, and you could tell that they're asking you to do that thing wasn't just about getting that thing done? So I'm at, whether it's someone that's kind of overbearing at work, or whether it's your partner asking you to do something, so sometimes when your partner asks you if you're willing to pick up the kids or wash the dishes or fold the laundry or whatever, sometimes they're actually just asking if you would mind doing that. And the reason is because they're thinking about all the things they need to get done, and they're thinking that would really help them if you could take care of that particular task. Other times when they ask that question, you can tell that maybe they don't even expect you to end up doing that thing, but they want to let you know that they resent you because of all the things that you don't do, or because of all the things that you haven't done, or because of the thing that you're doing that makes it so that you won't be able to do the thing they're asking you to do. And when you feel that, you know what I'm saying, and you react oftentimes to that stuff, whether or not it's ever directly talked about at all. And that's this kind of there are these just minefields, and very often in the way people interact. And I think the cool thing about the way that we do this is that it doesn't really matter whether you've been together for a really long time, a relatively brief time, maybe you're not even married yet and you're kind of contemplating it and you want to let's do a little diagnostic scan, let's kind of optimize things, let's get the tires rotated before we take this thing out on the road. That's a smart thing to do. These patterns, the things that we're going to be kind of going through, it works for all of that. It works for all of it because, I see a lot of people who I really think it's like, you guys, for as far as I can tell, you don't belong together, right? You both seem very unhappy, but for whatever reason, you're not willing to consider breaking up. That's fine, right? I'm willing to work within whatever parameters a person or a couple gives me in terms of, okay, here's what we're willing to do, here's what we're totally unwilling to do, no matter what. Now, how can you help us within the context of that? I see people all the time where the relationship looks unlikely to persist into the future, but even still, in the short term, you could have more fun together if you didn't talk to each other like this, and if you didn't do this, and if you're thinking this, don't communicate it this way, do it this way instead. Or are you, you literally, sometimes I watch people in conversation, sometimes we'll just be hanging out with people that were, friends of friends or something, and I'll watch, and I'll just think, oh my God, it's as if you're going out of your way to create acrimony with the other person, or to have a huge fight on the way home from this party or something like that. And the interesting thing is that neither person in the conversation, they're going back and forth, and it's like they're kind of slugging each other, and it's like they're talking past each other, and it's so obvious that boy, at any moment someone's going to say something, and that's going to be the thing that sticks in their craw, and they're going to have a fight. You know what I mean? And neither person realizes how close to the edge of discord they're kind of treading. Do you know what I'm saying? And that's it's like if you ever watch those old what is it what was that movie we watched last night? Harrison Ford, Clear and Present Danger. They're out in the jungle, and they're kind of they got these commandos, and they've got their guns, and they're looking around for stuff. And one of them steps on basically fake ground. It's not really there, and it's they had no idea it was there until they stepped on it and started giving way. Now a lot of people, they don't know it's there until they step on it, it gives way, they fall through, and they get impaled on the spike or whatever it is. And one of the really cool things about learning you want to learn what a booby trap looks like. You know what I'm saying? Whether you're setting it without realizing it, I'm just, I'm not trying to hurt my partner. Let me just sprinkle all these thumbtacks all over the carpet and then leave, or whether your partner's setting one for you. And I'm learning to kind of know what these relationship booby traps look like, learning what they're made out of, learning how to, it's one thing to be able to see a bomb and to recognize a bomb when you see it. It's another thing to know how to diffuse it. It's maybe I can see you warming up to something that is going to cause a problem. Maybe you can see me kind of cooking up a state that I'm going to use to kind of come against you. That's really useful. You want to be able to see that. If you get a strange package in the mail, you want to be able to say, that's a strange package. I'm not going to just open that like it's a box of cookies. But then you also, assuming you're going to stay in, you're not just going to kind of set that on the mantle and say, don't touch it, kids, we think it might be a bomb. You need the ability to deconstruct that stuff. If you're going to stay in a relationship with this person, you need the ability not only not to just rip the package open, do I look fat in this dress? And, kind of. That's a person who's like, oh boy, a package, and they open it, right? Versus someone who's able to see the invitation and bring the fact that their partner is inviting them to have a fight to their partner's attention in a way that doesn't go And it helps the other person say, oh my goodness, I had no idea I was setting a trap. Because, you know, when you set a trap for your partner, you're not really just setting a trap for your partner. You're setting a trap for both of you. And it's a trap of mediocrity, and it's a trap of one more fight, and it's a trap of resentment, and it's a trap of that kind of that terrible self-justified self-pity that you feel when you have just one more fight that concludes to you once again whatever you think your partner is. That feeling that you just feel so sorry for, it doesn't feel good to feel that way. And a lot of what we're talking about here is kind of seeing through the illusions that we create for ourselves about, not necessarily about what's happening, because very often, in fact, they're talking to you in ways that aren't nice, or they're not doing things that maybe a good partner would be doing. It's not all in your head. It's not imaginary. So stuff is in fact happening. But the reasons that it's happening very often, and the meanings that the fact that it's happening have, very often that stuff are things that we kind of make up in our mind, and we often do that to our detriment. We do it in ways that makes us feel worse than we need to feel, and we do it in ways that tends to set us up to respond to those things in ways that are going to maybe perpetuate them or make them worse. And really, so much I think about what learning to have a really good relationship is about is learning how to be your own person, and learning how to do things that seem likely to improve what it's like to be you, rather than just doing whatever it is you happen to have been programmed to do. And, you know, when you compare the version of you that's just kind of running patterns a lot of the time and thinking occasionally, usually people run patterns, create a problem, then they think their way out of it. You know, so they're cleaning up the mess. Their conscious mind is working double time to clean up the mess that their unconscious patterns creates. But when you look at the life that you're creating, or the relationship that you're able to sustain when you're kind of burdened with all these ineffective patterns, these things that cause problems and all this, and you compare that not with another person on Instagram or on Facebook who seems like I have a perfect life, compare it with you when you get to think for yourself, and you get to have this awareness that allows you to say, wait a minute, I'm doing the same thing that I did before, and it didn't work last time, and it never has. I don't think I want to do that again. When you compare the results that those two versions of yourself are able to create, it's like night and day. It's crazy. I mean, and it's just like, oh my goodness. It's like, you know, you swimming the English Channel with a 100-pound strapped to your ankle. I mean, it's just no comparison. When you cut the chains of those patterns away, you still have to sometimes learn how to swim. You still have to build up some endurance. But you got a chance. And working at it isn't miserable. And I think that's one of those things. It's miserable trying to improve your relationship when some part of you deep down believes that it's not really possible to change it. Mm-hmm. But once it's just you and not you and all the baggage stuff, and, you know, sometimes it's baggage that causes you to mistreat your partner. Sometimes it's baggage that causes you to allow your partner to mistreat you, or to assign meanings to the fact that they're mistreating you that feel terrible, you know, and that just kind of sap your motivation to create something different. As soon as you're really resourcefully engaged with life and it's like a fair fight, it becomes a fun thing.
Yes, it does. Thank you, Anna. That's so nice. So yeah, we're really excited. You know, like, there have been times in our relationship where I've just been like, oh, I can't be fixed. I'm broken. You know, my problems, my patterns are too deep. And, you know, luckily Steve is patient enough to have stuck it out with me. And he's really, really good at seeing those traps that I set. And I would set these traps and be just so unaware. And he's just like, he's got this like sniffer. He's like, and he knows. And this is such an interesting thing too, is, you know, the way that I respond to him bringing it to my attention tells him whether or not I was setting a trap or not. And so, you know, these are some of the skills we want to impart to you guys during this 4-week program, this relationship reboot in February. It's going to be really fun. We've never done anything like this before. We think it's going to be a super, super fun time of getting to know you guys, and really just kind of being very open about our own fights and stuff, and that ability to like take apart and disassemble and deconstruct what is really going on here. What's the real problem? So that you can have those skills with your partner, so that you guys can be on that same team and say, listen, I know there's like an adult version of you in there that's free from these patterns, that's not a hurt child or a condescending parent. It's just cool. Like, that's the person you probably started dating, and that's, you know, and that, you know, do you ever get to that point where it's like, gosh, why can't he just stay that version of himself? Or why can't I just stay this version of myself? Why do I transition into these like really super dysfunctional versions of myself? Can I fix that? Yes, you can. And you can do it by becoming more aware of how you go about operating your mind, and and the positive benefits of doing this work. Like we said, health, obviously, like more harmony in your relationship, but it's affecting your money, it's affecting your business, it's affecting your children, it's affecting literally every area of your life. And so that's why, because this tends to be such like a hot topic, it's like, couple stuff, let's start here. And then you'll learn the skills that will like spill over into every other area of your life to help improve that. So,
and it highlights that stuff too. Real quick, I'll talk to somebody, like one person in a relationship, first conversation that I'm having with them. A lot of the things that they're going to need to do sort of in their own life in order to make it possible to sort of, get the relationship ready to see if it's going to move forward or if it's going to kind of fall apart. It becomes very clear immediately, because a lot of the times the things that bother a person about what's going wrong in the relationship inform a lot about the kind of one-on-one or the kind of individual work that they can do sort of to make it possible for them to be happy and secure and able to create and maintain relationships that they really like.
We have a good like real life question
Okay.
here. I can't read the whole thing, Anna, but I'll get to what I can read of it. How do you, let's say my boyfriend hung up before I wanted to hang up and it felt so disrespectful.
Mm-hmm.
How can I ... That's all we got. But
That's interesting. Is this, so I would ask myself a couple of different things in terms of, probably you probably the rest of your question would have made this clear, but for whatever reason we can't expand the comment section. I would ask myself, if I were in a position like what I think the one you're describing, I would say, to what extent is that behavior, that action on their part, indicative of their overall attitude towards me? Is that characteristic of how they act towards me? Is it characteristic of how they act towards me under certain circumstances? So for example, if that's how they behave towards you every time you're trying to talk about how you feel, that would concern me. If that's how they behave or react every time they're really stressed out, that, although I'm not okay with that forever, that says they maybe weren't reacting. That doesn't necessarily indicate that they don't care about you. It indicates that they have they respond and interact very unresourcefully when they're under stress, when they're under pressure. So in terms of whether it's a deal breaker or not, that's one of the things I would say is like, to what extent is this indicative of, yeah?
she says, how can I teach him to respect our conversation?
Yeah, okay, that's an interesting one. What? How do you know he doesn't respect the conversation? Is that type of thing a typical? He hangs up. Did he hang up? Were you guys having a conversation like, okay, yeah, I'll see you later, and then we'll get pizza, and then this, and you were like, oh, and I think I'd like to, and he kind of hung up the phone then? Was it just because he thought it was over, or was it simply like you said, please listen to me, I have something important to say, and he said no, and he hung up? When you were talking, were you why did he do it, do you think? Do you think he did it because he was convinced that there was negative energy, or that you guys had been fighting and nothing productive was going to happen? There's so many things kind of surrounding it. Now, I would say that him hanging up on you, and this isn't a question of whether or not he was right to do it, because hanging up on a person, unless you were just behaving in a completely off the wall kind of way, hanging up on someone's rarely the most resourceful thing to do, unless they're a telemarketer. Like if you're in a relationship talking to each other and the other person, like if you weren't screaming at him or hysterical or using profanity towards him or something like that, him hanging up probably didn't make sense. So set that aside. People sometimes do things that don't make sense. People sometimes do things that aren't resourceful. My next thing is, does he have a pattern of doing this in the past? Is this typical of him? What's the context in which he's doing it? To what extent do you think it indicates something fundamental about him overall, or is it something fundamental about him in certain specific circumstances, like he's stressed or he's angry or he's exhausted or whatever? Or is it indicative of how he feels towards you? Is he generally dismissive of you and how you feel?
He was tired under stress and other subjects, but still I don't do that to him.
Okay, so in that situation, I would probably try to describe or try to help him understand how it feels to you for him to hang up, right? And what it means. And so I would even kind of in your own kind of as a personal exercise, what does it mean that he hung up on me? Does it mean that he intend to disrespect me, or did he just not realize what a disrespectful thing that was to do? Did he indicate to you that he was really desperate to get off the phone because of how tired he was, and did you not maybe honor that request or appreciate that? I would sit down with him and try to have like a conversation that's like, listen, I really am upset by what you did, and I'm aware of the fact that some of my being as upset as I am might have to do with me. Some of it might have to do with you and the intrinsic kind of elements of that behavior. And I want to figure out a way where I can not feel this way about you again, and where we can not get to the point where you feel like you have to do that. And so again, it would probably be like the specifics. I don't know about. There's so many things contextually that could inform what the real discussion is. But I think that if you communicate to him like, this is really bothering me, he should be interested in the fact that you're really bothered by something that he did, regardless of whether you're like 100% right to be bothered by it. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, if I do something innocuous, like not a big deal, and Melissa's really hurt by it, it's not really good relationship etiquette for me just to say, well, it's not reasonable for you to be upset by that, and so I don't care that you're upset. So I think that's one thing just to kind of look out for. What if I said, you do this, you'll need to have done to you to understand how it feels? Well, now see, that I don't know if that, generally speaking, if someone did something that you don't let, that's like saying if he were to cheat on you, would you then say, well, I'm going to go cheat on you so you know how it feels? One, there's a kind of tit for tat thing that I personally am not into, and that doesn't typically tend to create the results that you want in a relationship. I mean, he probably deserves to be hung up on, but whether it's going to necessarily serve you to do it, I don't know. The other thing is that it's possible that if you hang up on him, his experience of being hung up on, especially if he knows that you're just doing it just to show him a lesson, his experience probably won't be the same as yours. And that's one of those things. He probably won't assign the same meanings to it. He probably will see it. I mean, if he gets angry, he may see it as an effort at manipulation. He may think that he was genuinely stressed and so he did something and now you're just trying to get up. He might see it as childish. He might just not care because he knows what you're doing. And so I think it would be better if you do your best to describe to him how it felt, and hopefully he will be interested in the fact that that was your emotional response without having to feel like he would have that same emotional response where that, because if he's only going to honor emotional responses that you have that are the same as the ones that he would have, well, he should just get in a relationship with himself. Maybe that's what should happen, is that he just be by himself. Do you know what I mean? Because if I'm only going to care about Melissa being upset when I would be upset too, or when I am upset too, or when I would be upset if I were in her situation, well, then why the hell am I with this person? That doesn't make any sense. I need to respond to her. I don't need to respond to how I would respond if I were her. I should just go get a cardboard cutout of me and take him out on a date. You know what I'm saying? And like talk to him on the telephone. And so, I mean, I think do your best to kind of communicate, assume the best, within reason. Just say, give him sort of the benefit of the doubt. He knows not what he does, right? Sometimes guys in particular, and I can say this, guys in particular can be really dumb. Women can be complicated, guys can be dumb. I know that's a generalization and it is probably not right a lot of the time, but a lot of the time it is. And so I would do your best to, now what's really interesting here is view this as an opportunity. View this as an opportunity to not solve the hang-up issue, but see how he responds. I don't know how long you guys have been together, how well you know each other, whatever. I would want to see how he responds when you try to communicate to him how you feel. This is not about telling you that you're wrong. This is not about saying that you shouldn't have hung up. This isn't about punishing you for hanging up. This isn't about trying to get my way, make me right and you wrong. But I just want to let you know how I felt when you did that. And, is there something, if you are exhausted and just have to get off the phone, maybe you could make another arrangement where he says to you, listen, I love you, I care about you, this is very important, but I, in this moment, don't have the energy to continue this conversation. I'm just done. And if I stay on the phone, I know I'm setting myself up to say something I don't mean or whatever. Could you come to an agreement like that? Look at his interest in coming to some kind of shared arrangement with you. I think that will tell you more about him and who he is than the fact that one time when he was impatient and tired, he hung up on you. You know what I'm saying? How he responds to your good faith effort to let him know how you feel. That would be more relevant to me. So I hope that's useful.
Yes. So, I mean, this is the kind of stuff that we're going to be doing in this 4-week series, which I think is going to be really fun, is, kind of dissecting like fights, things that cause disharmony in the relationship. And so, yeah, if you have any interest in that at all, just send me a message and I will send you over the details about it. We're doing an early bird special pricing until Sunday. So, yeah, definitely try to get in before that. No, I am not familiar with that person, Brooke. But yeah, have a great night, everyone. We love you guys, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.
Good night.